Hello everyone, in this video I'll be teaching you the King's fianchetto opening. The King's fianchetto opening opens with g3, so preparing to fianchetto the bishop to g2. We have d5, striking in the centre, and we have knight to f3, c5, and bishop to g2. So you can see in this position, white is trying to have a nice kingside defence, and then maybe afterwards white will try to counter-strike in the centre. You can see here black are controlling lots of squares, the light squares and the dark squares, so black is controlling a lot. Now the knight comes in and controls more light squares with knight to f6, and we have a d4. C takes on d4 and castles. So black's doubled up. It will be easy for white to recapture one of these pawns in a minute. So knight to c6 and knight takes on d4, and we have e5 trying to kick away this knight. This knight can retreat, or the knight can take, or the knight can shift into a better position. Knight takes on c6, b takes c6, and we have b3. Some ideas of c4 maybe, preparing to fianchetto this bishop. You could shift this knight over to d2, then over to f3 into the position that the last knight was on. So we have bishop to c5 and bishop to b2. Queen to d6, developing the queen now. c4, striking in the centre. And now we have castles. Knight to c3 and rook to d8, adding as much pressure as possible to this pawn. So this pawn is being triple attacked. The knight shifts over into a better position, trying to attack this bishop with knight to a4. And now black close off the position, so no more threats, with d4. And now we have knight takes on c5, queen takes c5, and queen to d3. Bishop to b7, just developing the bishop, indirectly attacking this diagonal. And we have rook to d1. So now doubling up on the d file. And we have queen to e7. This is the first variation of the King's Indian attack. This is the Sicilian variation of the King's fianchetto opening. Now we have g3. So this is what makes it the King's fianchetto opening. This is the symmetrical variation with the move g6. So now both black and white prepare to fianchetto the bishops. Knight to f6, knight to f3, then we'll see knight to f6. Knight to f6 and bishop to g2 and bishop to g7. d4, so striking in the centre. White is the first to gain central control and strike in the centre. And now we have d5. Castles, and we have castles. Bishop to f4 and bishop to f5. So this is fairly symmetrical. Knight b to d2 and probably knight b to d7, because this is a symmetrical variation of the King's Indian attack. c3, and now we have h6. Now changing things so the bishop can't come to g5 and attack this knight. Black doesn't want this, so they stop this with h6, holding the g5 square. Queen to b3 and rook to b8. Now from here, the move that is played is rook a to d1. This is how we continue from here. So this rook is indirectly attacking the queen, putting some pressure on the b file, because the queen was adding lots of pressure to the b file, so the rook controls some of the b file, so now the queen doesn't dominate the file. g5, trying to ask the bishop, do you want to move, you can retreat, or do you want to move to a better position? The bishop moves to e5, and now we have e6, c4, and knight takes on e5. And now this knight is pressurized. It was an alright idea to attack the knight or capture the bishop. So you could shift the knight over to d7 here, and then it will be attacking this pawn, double attacking with including the bishop. So we have knight f to d7. And we have c takes on d5. E takes d5 and queen takes d5. Knight takes on e5, so threatening to capture this knight, attacking and asking for a queen trade. Queen to c5. White avoids this queen trade. And now we have b5. Queen shifts back to c1, and knight goes back to d7. The knight shifts over to c4, pinning this knight down with the rook and shifting the knight over. And the bishop goes after the knight with bishop to e6. And now we have knight to e3, bringing the knight to a nicer square. So this is the symmetrical variation of the king's fianchetto attack. Let's move on. g3. And now we have b6, bishop g2, and knight to c6. You can't bring the bishop out here because the bishop will take and then you'll lose your rook as well. So knight to f3 and bishop to b7. We have d4 and knight to f6, c4 and e6, knight to c3. Just gaining some central control here, controlling the center with your knight. This knight is doing a good job. So in this variation, white is more controlled. So they have a very nice central attack and a very nice kingside with the fianchettoed bishop behind the knight. Now we have bishop to e7. So this time black isn't attempting to fianchetto the bishop. Instead, black is just bringing the bishop to this e7 square, this very nice square, and ready to just castle. Castles and castles. And now we have bishop to f4. And now we have bishop to b4. So just attacking this knight. This knight isn't pinned. The knight could shift over if there are any ideas. Not really any at the moment. You could maybe push forwards in this position. Many different variations. So hopefully you've enjoyed this video on the King's Fianchetto opening.